It helps men to be open, to be okay, man, that you've been hurt, or to release those feelings or emotions. Look, I'm not feeling well right now. You know, I feel hurt by what you said. I'm very uncomfortable. We don't say things like that. And so it gives you another language to move into and really
I love
identify that.
Your book is powerful. Yes, clap it up for him. Woo! I got a man back there testifying, say yes, he can feel that thing. And so I want to ask you too, Doc. So what do you feel like folks can get out of your transformational tool, which is the powerful book that you have?
Okay, I've talked that I'm very skilled-based. Y'all get this. I'm also research-based because I'm an academic. I come from an academic background. So as I had to figure out how to have relationships. So I was fortunate I could read it and study it, then I could test it out in my own life and see what worked and what didn't work. So the first book was the summary of that. The book that's out there now, Conscious Change, are my students and my clients who have learned the skills, applied them to their life. So these are 19 authors who talk about very heart-rending, scary things they went through and how they used the skills to make it work. So that's the book for sale now.
Yes, thank you so much. Clap it up for her. So guys, these are transformational tools. We shared with you today our pain. So you understand that we really been through something, right? Because it's hard to teach somebody something that they ain't been through, right? So it's your real life experiences that actually make you an expert in that. And then these books also give you information of how to overcome. A lot of us are sitting alone and we in a huddle and we're not speaking to folks or really finding out how to get through your situation so you stay stuck. But by reading and by getting information from folks that's been through things, you can really transform yourself from the inside out. And I'm gonna leave my partner with the closing words.
Look, I just want to say that there is no reward in walking around suffering. At the end of it, there is no great house, a great loan in the bank. You're just walking around. And this is not, what do you call it, a dress rehearsal. This is it. So please seek your healing, acknowledge it, find ways to heal from it. There are 4 great tools right here on this stage. And take it serious. Take you serious. You know, don't take you for granted. Stop putting other people before you do the work that you need to do for you.
That's real. Our book is entitled, I Love Me More. So we challenge each and every person in this audience to love yourself more. Self-care is working on you. And we got the tools to help you start working on you today. So we're gonna meet you in the bookstore. Please come by, come let us talk to you, share with us your stories. We definitely wanna connect with you in a real way. So we wanna give it up to the collective curates for having us here. Yay. Thank you so much. And we're gonna pass the show back over to the woman in charge.
So today, we are going to be talking about relationships and maintaining our emotional wellness. Our next group of authors are going to show how they've overcome generational trauma and found joy and humanity. Let's welcome to the Essence stage, moderator Dr. Jamila T. Davis, media personality, podcast host I Love Me More, Black Women's Lives Matter. Sharing the stage with her is digital creator and star of Love and Hip Hop, Tara Wallace. They look so beautiful, don't they? And our panelists. The author of 27 Summers, My Journey to Freedom, Forgiveness, and Redemption During My Time in Angola Prison, Ronald Olivier. And finally, organizational coach and author of Conscious Change and Reframing Change, Dr. Jean Ladding.
So what's up, Essence?
Thank you.
How y'all feeling today?
Y'all look amazing.
So today, y'all, we are going to have a conversation that I feel like is going to be transformational for all of us, right? One thing that we have in common with the two authors today is that we write self-help books, right? And a lot of times you get healing from self-help books, but you don't know what somebody went through to get that message that they're giving to you. So we're going to talk about that a little bit and how we came about creating these tools and now how they're positioned to help you. So we'll start with my co-host, Tara Wallace. Many of you guys know that we have a podcast called I Love Me More, right? And it's based on our book, I Love Me More, the 8 steps to breaking free from toxic relationships. I have been through a world of toxic relationships, and so has my co-host who will share that with you. I myself am formerly incarcerated. I spent close to a decade in federal prison, and a lot of me getting to prison was based on poor choices. And as I begin to heal, I utilize writing to help me heal, and now I pass those tools on to others. And this is my co-host.
Hello, y'all. You know, sometimes we all have different stories, right? So it's extremely important that we share all of these stories because you don't know who and how people will relate to you. One of the craziest things that happened to me, and what was the hardest thing also, was that a lot of my trauma came from after I thought I had done all of the things right? I had gone to school, I didn't get pregnant young, I did all of the things that my parents told me I was supposed to do. And then 2000 something or another, I found myself on one of the largest platforms, national TV, where the person I loved the most had married someone else. And it really made me question everything I had come to know up until that point. And I really had to go back to that 18-year-old me to figure out who was I at that time, because I was so clear on what I wanted, and I had to ground myself and regroup. So that's why I share my story, is so that for the young girl who thinks she's doing it right? You may have to drop it all, configure it again, and start over, and that's okay. We're not tied up in just a relationship. We are more than that, no matter how hard it hurts.
That's a real thing. So speaking about trauma, our first guest has been through a world of trauma. Could you just share a little bit about who you are and your experience that led to writing?
Yes, my name is Ronald, Olivier. I'm a native of New Orleans, so I'm home, and I'm very happy to be here. You know, I know you can hear it, yeah, baby. You know, so I come from the 7 and 8 ward area. I grew up in the hood, and if you know anything about the hood, it's traumatic to live there. And so, at an early age of 16, I found myself on trial for first-degree murder, and then later got a mandatory life sentence without benefits of parole at the age of 17, and at 18, I ended up in Angola, Louisiana State Penitentiary. That's trauma stacked up on trauma there. And so I go through that, and so how do you deal with trauma? First of all, you got to realize that you've been traumatized. And so when I was coming through that in my neighborhood, I was very accustomed to seeing people killed and seeing gunshot wounds and hearing sirens. I was accustomed to that. I didn't know I was traumatized. I thought that's how it was supposed to be. And so a lot of times it's difficult to see the picture when you're in it. And so here it is, I realized how traumatized I was. And I believe the greatest trauma healer is God. Yeah, man, I don't want to have church, but we might just have some.
We can have it now, amen?
And
Amen.
And so that's who healed me. That's what started my journey on healing. And God, he used people. And I know in our culture, it's not acceptable to go to counseling and to have therapists. You know, we don't do that. And so consequently, we hide our trauma and just bury it and try to deal with it ourselves. And I believe when we hide that in the attic in our mind, it's like burying a dead body in a shallow grave. And what happens to that? It starts to stink.
That's real.
And
so I just want to tell you, when I read your book,
yeah,
it triggered me. So I'm somebody that spent close to a decade in prison, and you spent 27 summers, right?
Yes, ma'am.
In prison. But one of the things I noticed is that just kind of like you, like me, your transformation came from behind bars, right? And I realized how real God is and how he does that with us sometimes. He takes us to dark spaces because it's in those dark spaces where we begin to learn. So I want to ask you about your book and the process of you writing that. Like, how was that for you? Did that free you? Because as I'm reading and turning through these pages, y'all, it was reading his life story, but it was also learning from him of how he coped through such a crazy situation.
Yes, yes. And so that process was amazing. It started for me just going all over, being invited, different states, sharing my story. You know, that's how it started. And then I thought, wait, hold up, I can put this in a book. I saw the effect that it was having on people when I shared my story. And so I thought about writing it. And amazingly, I was in Brooklyn, and Brooklyn Tabernacle, I'm speaking, and after I finished speaking, a lady comes up to me, and she says, I was here the first time you spoke. She said, man, the first time you spoke, I thought about your story being a book. She said, but I wasn't in position then. She said, I just recently became the chief executive editor of Nelson Book Publishing Company. She said, we got to do a book. And come on, that was a miracle right there.
That's God.
You know? If you know anything about the book process, it doesn't go like that. And so here it is. We started on this journey of putting my story in a book. And each time I tell it and share it, it's healing for me.
That's good. That's good.
And every time it goes out and I hear someone, it touch someone else's life and help someone, man, that's healing for me. And so I'm always in this process of being healed from trauma.
I wanted to ask you a question. When you talk about trauma, can you talk to the audience about practical strategies that they can use to help get through some of the most traumatic times in their life?
All right, first of all, like what I just said, you have to recognize that you've been traumatized. That's the first step, and then second of all, man, I believe this here with all my heart of hearts, that helped me a lot was my relationship with God, depending on God, trusting him, reading his word, spending time with him, and God bringing people in my life that's going to help me and not hurt me. Surrounding myself around people that helps me grow. I like to be in a circle with people that's smarter than me. Come on, if you're the smartest person in your circle, you're in the wrong circle.
Absolutely.
And so you need to be stretched. You need to be challenged. And so surrounding yourself around people like that and people that's going into that direction will definitely help you heal.
That is good. So now let's get to our next guest, right? Because we're talking about strategies and tools, right? Ways that we can heal from trauma. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this work of writing such amazing books that help to transform the lives of people?
Okay, so I'm a product of trauma too. I haven't put that part of it in my books because my books focused on how to live and how to make it in this world, basically. I grew up with a mother who was both alcoholic and a rageaholic. A rageaholic means when she got drunk, we were the focus of her rage. So I've tried to think of how to summarize my childhood. Imagine every time I came home from school, my sisters and I talked about that now. We come home from school, we stand before the door, and we take a deep breath because we don't know what's going to be inside the door. So day after day, that's how I grew up. I believe now, listening to Ronnie talk, I believe now that I went through what I went through so I could teach and write and help others. There's no other way to make sense of my experience than to say I was put on this planet to suffer so that I could then help those who are suffering.
Ooh, stop right there. So now I want to talk to somebody in this audience, right? Because we all go through things. And sometimes we think that we're alone in our journey, but we don't often realize that God is using the very thing that we're going through to build us up to help someone else, right? And many of you guys have a story in you, or a book in you, or a ministry in you, or something that you're supposed to do for someone else, and it's your pain that's actually going to lead you to your purpose, right? So speaking of that pain, if you could just share with us, like reading your book was just amazing. I learned so many things. I'm supposed to be a self-help expert, but reading your book, I'm like, okay, hold on. I got something to learn from the doc. Can you share a few principles with folks that are hurting right now or going through some kind of trauma, of ways and things that they could use to heal?
Yes. So that's my husband right directly in front of me. We've been together 45 years.
Wow.
Yes. Clap it up for the 45.
Wow.
Angela,
Maybe
baby,
it's
we got to
44.
make it to the 45.
But
Okay.
47? Oh, my husband corrected me. It's 47 years.
Oh, 47.
So
Clap it up for 47. That's real.
So we got some real instructions on how to get here, to get to the lot J, and then to get to the loading dock, and to get here and there. So the question is, what time should we leave the hotel? He has a great sense of time. I don't. I have to add it up. So we're both saying to each other, you're not listening to me. And while we were having this discussion, I'm thinking about this panel today, and I'm thinking, what skills are we using right now so that we're making this work, even though we're getting totally pissed? We did active listening. Jean, you're not listening to me. Diallo, you're not listening to me. We worked real hard on that. We separated impact from intent. Just because I'm getting pissed doesn't mean he intends to hurt me.
Oh, wow.
And I could see it with him. We accepted our responsibility. I was very intentional in how I talked with him to make sure I didn't say anything that I would regret, or that was wrong, or that was just coming out of frustration and anger. So we call that accept your own contribution. So I accepted my contribution. He was lying in bed looking at me, and I was thinking, probably right now he's not feeling too good about me. But he was very intentional in how he talked with me to make sure that even if he was getting frustrated, he didn't vent on top of me.
That's great.
So those three
amazing.
right there is what.
I love
You know,
it.
I had the opportunity to have a conversation with you backstage, and I was just so excited to see her that I couldn't wait. And it's like a gym to ask questions that I may not have another opportunity to ask again, anyone who's experienced that. So thank you, and I learned so much. And when you talk about resilience, right, or even how you just said about having a certain level of accountability, which is hard for all of us, right, to have
Yes.
accountability and look at ourselves and see where we went wrong. Like, when you talk about resilience, like, what is that mindset? Like, where do you self-check that to say, not just resilience, not just having resilience, it doesn't just fall from the sky. What are those tools? How do you unpack that so that someone can have that?
Okay, he addressed a good part of it. Don't stuff it and don't vent it. He talked about how we stuff our emotions, we hold them in. So that's one side of it. The other side is what I said, my husband and I were intentional not to do. We don't vent. We don't explode on any people. So what's in between suppressing your emotions, and venting? What's in between is acknowledging and allowing yourself to feel the emotion and then release the emotion. Some people try to release the emotion without first feeling, and it won't go away. It won't go away. You have to allow yourself to, I call it sinking in it. I just sinking in it. I'm full of self-pity. Everybody's wrong. I'm the only person. It's so hard. I just allow myself to just sink into it and then let it go. And I have tools and strategies for how to let it go.
Wow. Wow, I always try to self-check in that way because I'm a mom. So I try to, it's so easy for us to lash out or be in that moment of frustration. But what I have learned is to go back and have that open dialogue, to apologize to my children or to say, well, I don't know, or I was wrong. And so that just solidified that. It just gave me so much more to think about.
And that's one of our skills, apologize effectively. There's an effective way to apologize so that it really works, and there's a way to apologize so people think, oh, she didn't mean it. She just said she's sorry, but she didn't mean it.
But it's when you do apologize, I just want to say this. Is it once you apologize, they say that that's what you're supposed to do. It's now not your responsibility to control how the other person thinks or how they receive it.
I'm a little different from that because I believe in being effective, not just right. That stance is being right. I'm right, I've done my part. Being effective is being also responsive to how others are receiving you. And if they are not receiving you in the way you want, then for me, what I try to do is I try to adapt what I'm saying so the other person, my intent and the impact on them are matched.
I have one more question for you because, I don't know if I'm going to ever have an opportunity to have ask you these questions, and I think they're so important. And that is, how do you feel cultural and societal norms influence our relationships and emotional wellness, particularly within the Black community?
Yeah, so cultural norms stir up the idea of stereotypes. And so when I think of stereotypes, and particularly stereotypes for Black women, I think of Nina Simone for women. Okay, I see some of y'all remember that song, right? So let's see, I have them here. Aunt Sarah, she bears up the suffering and the pain. Sweet Thing, she's the prostitute who can sell herself for anyone who has money to buy. I forgot the other one. Oh, here it was. Okay, Sophrona, yellow skin, product of rape, full of rage. And then Peaches, of course, I almost forgot about Peaches. She's the product of generational pain and bitterness. So those are the stereotypes, right? So the question is, how do we move past those cultural norms? And that's what my book is basically about. How do I, knowing I'm a product, myself personally am a product of trauma, how do I not bring those stereotypical behaviors into my actions with others? And I've talked about some of the skills already. But I never forget that I'm a product of trauma, and I never forget I am the product of generations of people who went through holy hell so I could be here.
That's good. That's good. So, wow. Clap it up for her for that. Amazing, amazing, amazing. I'm going to shift it back over to you, Ronald. I know for me, I'm actually a product of the trauma to prison pipeline. A lot of people talk about the school to prison pipeline, which we know a lot about, but we don't talk about the trauma to prison pipeline, which is with women, right? Particularly women of color. Many of the women that I was incarcerated with, and I told you guys I was there for close to a decade, right? They were women, more than 60-something% of us were there because of trauma. Something happened in our lives that took us to a dark place, and we started feeling less than. We started putting ourselves down and putting other people before us. And when you started talking about all the characters, in Nina Simone's work, I thought of myself. Because I feel like I've been quite a bit of those characters, and so have the women around me. So I feel like the healing has to occur within. But that's why books are important. We need tools, y'all. You don't just heal. You don't just get up one day and say, hey, I'm free and I heal. It's a journey and it's a process. And someone has to help you with it, right? And we know therapy oftentimes is stigmatized in our community. So we need to get through that with tools. And Tara, I wanted you to share, before I go back to Ronald, I Love Me More. And yes. The tool, like what is here and the tools in it that have helped you transform as they've helped me to transform.
So if you guys, just a brief education. So Dr. Jamila T. Davis and I wrote a book called I Love Me More, 8 Steps to Breaking Free from Toxic Relationships. And I want to have a lot of accountability here, because when you write a book and you begin to ask yourself the questions that you need to answer, you have to ask yourself, have I done the work? So, you know, Dr. Jamila T. Davis is a genius and she can write and write and write. But I found myself having to sit and be truthful and work it out, because you don't want to put a product out that you have not also answered the questions and lived through and sorted through, or even be confused in it. And one of the things that that we do is we take this book into the school systems, right? And what it does is it changes the mindset at a very early age, so that you are now conscious of perhaps some of the first traumas that you experience, even at as early as 13, 10, whatever the trauma is at whatever age, you begin to become aware of it. How can you have a level of accountability? What are your core values? Sometimes we don't even know what our core values are. We don't even know what we're offended by, because we don't even know what we stand for. So let's get clarification on that. Let's get language on that, so we can begin to change that. Because I find that sometimes, even as women, and you guys can agree with this if you want or not, is that we don't even know how traumatic a situation is until we're in it. We have never self-checked. And one of the things that I found, especially with the younger girls, is that they don't like to be wrong, right? They don't like to be wrong at all. So we have this open dialogue where girls feel comfortable and sharing and opening up. So we have these tools, as practical tools. And one of the amazing things about the book is at the very end, at the very end of each chapter, it's the space for you to do the work. The work that you don't have to answer publicly, you can do it. You can be truthful to yourself. Now, if you can't be truthful to yourself, that's a problem, right? You need to go back to chapter 1. Please do not proceed to chapter 2, okay? Please be honest so that you can answer, because if you're not doing the work, the healing is not going to fall from the sky. So that's I Love Me More.
Thank you. So speaking of trauma and healing tools, I want to go back to you, Ronald, and kind of take us through your book and like ways that folks say that they've healed. Because now I know a lot of you are going to grab these books. So we don't want you to just read. We want you to actually read with your healing, right? So they become your healing tools. So if you could just share with us with trauma, like men that have also experienced what you've experienced, what do you feel like your book helps them to do?
Well, I think one of the things that helps us to do is to talk about it, to open up. Men are very closed. We don't like to talk about things. We don't like to show much emotion, and we don't, you know, we shut down easily, especially if we're in a relationship when we have been open, and then what we open up with been used as a tool in an argument, or you wouldn't hear from us ever again, you know.
Good.
And you'll always hear, I'm okay, I'm good. That's the best you'll get out of us. And so I think my book helps you to open up and to really be honest with yourself. One of the hardest things for me in my book was to admit that, man, I had killed someone. And so I come from the streets, I come from the hood, and you never admit what you did. You know, that's part of the streets. I don't care if they got you on camera. It wasn't me.
That's real.
And so it took something for me to admit and to release that, you know, into the atmosphere. I believe this here, the devil, he feeds off of darkness and you hiding things. But when you release it to the light, it loses its power. And so the more I talked about it, the easier it became. And so I think that's one of the things my book